Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
Lily, Charlie.
And Josh.
Back to just the three of us.
Three
I like it.
regulars on the panel.
The Three Stooges.
We do have a great group of rotating guests, though.
Yes.
So
Thank you to all of you.
yeah. Especially our assistant producer, Kelsey. I have a lot of nice things to say. But let's discuss the work that we're going over, or the topic that we're going over today. What would that be?
The
Our
works of
favorite moderator.
James Joyce, and thank you.
Already James
I
Joyce.
knew this guy was a real nut, but he was a great writer, but he was...
James Joyce, allegedly, he may have had Asperger syndrome.
Mm-hmm. They say that.
Which, I could see that being the case because he had quirkers. The fact that he was from Ireland, had to write about being in Dublin, but he couldn't live there. He had to live in Paris.
Yep.
And yet, in the Midnight in Paris, in his appearance, he makes reference to the fact that he talks about Prout and Franks.
That's such a good movie. By the way, watch that movie if you love anything about Midnight in Paris.
We went over Dr. Tom's shows.
Yes,
in
we
the
watched
American Literature Between the Wars class.
Took 2+ periods to watch, I think.
I only thought it took one.
Yeah, no, it did actually. It did.
I don't remember having to.
I was gonna say it's a long movie, but it's not more than 3 hours.
Yeah, it's.
I thought it flew by, but anyway, I was a very
It's a
good
movie.
movie. First, I thought it was going to be a chick flick.
And
But
she
anyway,
usually kept us to the end of class. She was usually the last one to leave the party.
She was, yeah.
What's our first question?
Our first question is, do you feel that Joyce is the face of Irish literature? Do you feel anyone else deserves the title more?
There are probably writers from Ireland that I prefer. I like Yeats, Heaney, Durkin.
Oscar
But-
Wilde.
Oscar Wilde is a remarkable man.
Mhm.
He's wild.
But James Joyce probably does a great amount to contribute to.
Yeah, he captures Dublin and he
Dublin.
revolutionized the novel.
I would agree. You know, and every time I hear Irish lit, I automatically think of James Joyce. James Joyce. So
He's obviously the go-to person, but
But you
Whether-
have Seamus Heaney in poetry doing the same thing, so
he's just remarkable. The
Mhm.
fact, and they're also incredibly different. Seamus Heaney is really accessible, and
Mhm.
he's not trying to be complicated. James Joyce, on the other hand, is doing everything he can to be complicated. He even mentioned that.
yeah.
He says how if you can't understand what he's saying, then he really doesn't want you to read his
you gotta figure it out.
book. Then again, that's usually what those are the authors that are studied in lit classes,
Yep.
not the ones that are trying to cater to the market.
Mm-hmm.
Next question.
I still think Ulysses is one of the greatest books in the world.
Okay,
All
that's
right,
gonna
you're
lead us-
jumping the gun a bit. What is your favorite James Joyce work and why?
I think she just said her answer.
I did. Ulysses will always be my favorite Joyce title. And why? It runs the gamut. It does everything. It starts at the beginning by being at parallel to the Odyssey, right? And then it goes all the way beyond. It starts right at the apex of Western literature and then transcends everything we thought we knew about it into a very radical, formal approach. Everything sort of skips around, things blend together, and meanwhile, just 3 days in Dublin, and meanwhile, he can draw all these parallels to the Odyssey and the Sirens, who's where, and trying to piece it all together.
Really eager to check out Ulysses. I think you're supposed to follow the Homer's Odyssey
Indeed.
when looking at it, and
Wasn't Homer that yellow guy from The Simpsons?
Mm-hmm.
Ha ha ha.
oh,
And think about it.
I
What's Stephen's last name? Do you remember? The recurring character from Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, Ulysses, and some of the other stories. Daedalus,
Daedalus,
which pulls back to the Daedalus myth. Daedalus built the maze that housed the Minotaur, and then he got imprisoned on the island of Crete and escaped with his son Icarus, but the wings melted.
Could get into that.
I'm going to probably read it. I know somebody told one of my favorite booktubers made mention of the fact that she wanted to throw it at a wall. It was so frustrating.
Oh, come
But
on.
I think that
It's
all
not
gonna
for
depend-
everyone.
Yeah, I know that there are intellectual people like yourself that thoroughly enjoy it,
Mhm.
and then there are just people that are looking for a good read. And
But that ending, and Gibraltar as a girl where I was a flower of the mountain, yes, and how he put a rose in my hair like the Andalusian girls used, or shall I wear a red, yes, and how he kissed me under the Moorish wall till I thought, well, as well him as another, and then I asked him with my eyes to ask again, yes, and reached down to me till he could feel my breasts all perfume, and yes, yes, I said, yes, I will, and then she's asking. He's asked her to marry him, right? You can
The fact
pick
that you
that up
memorized
with
the
the
whole
yes,
monologue
I
is
will,
amazing.
and then meanwhile there, you can put it together.
okay,
Having lunch, dinner, romantic dinner.
Well, he's eating her.
Okay. You know what?
Eating
No, no,
is
no.
going
Okay,
on.
I thought
already Charlie.
I thought it was about food. Okay.
What's your take?
There was a lot for me to narrow down, but it's a poem. Gentle lady, do not sing. It's a 8 lines, so I'll read it to you. Gentle lady, do not sing. Sad songs about the end of love. Lay aside sadness and sing. How love that passes is enough. And then the next stanza, it's only 2 stanzas. Sing about the long, deep sleep of lovers that are dead, and how in the grave all love shall sleep. Love is a weary now. Now it sounds dismal. It sounds, like but yeah, it does. But basically, what I got out of that is that the speaker is telling her, don't cry. There is life after death. I mean, depending on your views or whatever, which is, everyone has a different view, but he's basically saying, just stop crying. You'll see them on the other side. Life after death. That's a lot of views. Islam, Christianity. Now I'm bringing a religion into this, but still, there's always. But it's whatever you believe in. But in this poem, when I first read it, I was like, oh man. But then I read it again, and then I read it again, and about 84 times later, I realized that that's the meaning. There's, and there's all different types of meanings.
That's what you got to do with poetry.
I think it's
Gotta
very.
keep rereading it.
Pushing,
And then it'll finally come to you. For me, it took
And some people
84.
look at it differently too.
Yeah. And I feel that as long as you have an answer that's justifiable, once you justify your answer, there is no right or wrong. This is not math. This is not science. 2 + 2 is 7. I feel I didn't do well in math, but I did well in English and music. So anyway, I digress. But anyway, that was a great poem. And there's so many others too.
Chris isn't really known so much for his poetry. He's known far more for his prose.
Yes.
What I chose was the works in the Dubliners collection, which is remarkable.
I read that. It's one of my favorites.
It's these stories about growing up in Dublin, which
Heartbreaking.
there's so many good things to say about each of them. Probably the one that sticks out the most is Araby. It's his most familiar work. We went over. Yeah, we went over. It has over. It's the first among our videos that broke 1,000 views.
Wow.
But what's great about with Araby, it's this idea, the childhood crush on a girl that is not obtainable, and how he takes the steps to doing so, and yet he doesn't even come close to prevailing.
That's like when I'm in a music store and I see a really nice set of drums, and I look at the price tag, I look at the drum set, I'm like, okay, well, Why am I poor?
If you put your mind to making the money, you could
Oh
probably
yeah,
obtain it.
you know, I want to
In
make
his
some-
case, he was getting the stuffed animal,
Oh yeah.
but getting the stuffed animal was only one of the hurdles. Being
Right.
able to win her over was
I
almost
think it was something else.
impossible.
Was it? Nah, it could be. You know, it's been a while, but was it? It was a food-related item.
Hmm.
I think that was something else. Unless I'm thinking of something else probably.
Hmm.
It could have been a food-related item. Yeah. Oh no, it was a food-related item.
Yeah. I love food. You know that.
Don't we all?
Anybody have any final thoughts about James Joyce?
Really good author. Really. You know, I'd say he's ahead of his time. Well, at the time he was ahead of his
Remarkable man, especially
Yeah.
if he, granted, Asperger syndrome was not a diagnosis back then.
Right.
The doctor, he lived in the 20th century,
Yes.
so
time. There was no known treatments or
younger.
cure. There was no, there was no proper medicine. There was shock therapy. Yeah, well, that's not really going to work. But
if they were lower functioning, they would put them away, which is
Yeah.
very
you know,
disgusting.
yeah.
That's the whole thing in Of Mice and Men. That's why George kills Laney, because he
Yeah.
knows he's gonna get sent to the loony bin.
And those
and-
things were an atrocity until
Yeah.
the 60s
There was
and
abuse,
70s
there was-
during the Revolution.
It was bad.
There's a very, very good book if you can handle things about mistreatment in psychiatric hospitals by Whitaker called Mad in America, and read that, and it will blow your mind what they were willing to do to patients.
Yeah.
But back to James Joyce, there are a lot of people with someone like him being able to describe his environment is just people on the spectrum stereotypically have been deemed to be more math and science people. They preferred more straightforward answers as opposed to something like
Routine.
One of my
Right.
dearest friend, Jack, he's a writing, literature, and theater major. That's me to the core, so.
You know,
He
and
suffers from Asperger's as well.
on this, there is the spectrum. You know, I took every psychology class I had because I was going to go be a teacher, but then, you know, I had a lot of obstacles. In a nutshell, when I took those classes, I learned there was a spectrum, and you know, there's the lower end, and these people flipping brilliant, but can't tie their shoes. And now, I don't mean that out of disrespect. That's just an example. You know, I have a doctor. He was top of his class, but he can't tie his shoes. But he knows the answer, whatever it is. And then there's, the upper, on the other, let's put what I'm trying to say. On the other side of the spectrum, you have average, people go out, they can talk, and then you just pop the question, oh yeah, I have Asperger syndrome. Really?
they blend in much better. They're Thomas Jefferson. I
Yes.
almost can argue. I would argue the fact that he did.
I think-
him, Einstein, Isaac Newton,
Yeah.
even Hans Christian Andersen is placed in that. And then people have mentioned more contemporary people, Dan Aykroyd and Peter Tork from the Monkees.
Not actually better or worse, just different.
But
Otherwise, back in time, people say Mozart had autism.
That was
Amadeus.
mostly from abuse, but
You watched the movie Amadeus. Guy was flipping nuts, but the way he wrote, it was beautiful. I think he wrote a symphony overnight, or it was probably Beethoven. I hear these rumors that, I looked into it and it would actually happen. He wrote a symphony overnight. He had to have it in the next day.
okay.
And it worked.
Well,
But with regard to Joyce,
back to Joyce.
what can we conclude about Joyce?
He's a phenomenon. There are just not words enough. But if you want to take more away from Joyce, there is a very, very good collection of critical essays that's extremely expensive but worth the investment called Queer Joyce, Quare Joyce, and it's Joyce through the lens of LGBT studies.
Oh, okay, that'll be great. He never married, but I don't know if.
It's not that sort of, it's more the sense of the LGBT studies lens on identity politics, the self as performance. Is identity a rigid thing or just a set of fluid and ever-shifting lines you draw for yourself. Like, is identity Daedalus's labyrinth? You know, the last name again, Stephen Daedalus.
I would say my conclusion about Joyce is the fact that pretty much what I said to her at the beginning of the show. I don't know if he's my favorite writer from Ireland personally, but I do think that he was spectacular.
He was
at
a key
writing
role.
about Ireland.
He
I
was a
think that
key role
Was
in that.
he was one of the best when it came to writing
If you
about
want to
this.
make sense of the 20th century self, like, read Ulysses. I know it's frustrating and it's hard to follow and it's scattered and it's quote-unquote disorganized, but it's genuine. It's true to life.
I'll definitely check that one out. There are so many things I can recommend that if there's anything specific, I'll leave something at the bottom. But be sure to join us next time for another episode of Literary Gladiators. For now, keep reading.
Like and subscribe.